Tonight we wander back to an age when your teeth are not merely bones of utility but ticking time bombs of misery. The year is somewhere between the 12th and 13th centuries. No toothbrushes, no Novocaine, no dental insurance, and definitely no flavored floss. You lie beneath a thatched roof, the night air thick with wood smoke and damp straw. The moon peers through the slats like an uninvited guest, and your jaw pulses with that deep, ancient ache that feels like it's borrowing from eternity. Somewhere, a rooster crows too early. You groan. This, you realize, is not going to end well. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now, dim the lights, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pull your cloak tighter and stumble out into the misty dawn of a medieval village that smells faintly of rye bread, horse dung, and unwashed optimism. Tooth pain, in this era, is both a medical emergency and a moral failing. The local priest might suggest confession before extraction, just in case the pain is God's commentary on your last lie. Remedies range from holding roasted onions against your cheek to muttering charms involving Saint Apollonia, the patron saint of tooth sufferers. You pass the market square, where merchants sell questionable elixirs, vinegar soaked with iron nails, tinctures of sage and honey, powders scraped from deer antlers. A woman with a scarfed head swears by rubbing garlic on the gums. A man beside her recommends chewing beeswax for courage. None of it helps. Your pain sings like a lute string too tight to bear. That's when you hear it, softly at first, then clearer, a voice humming in the distance. A tune so oddly calm that it cuts through your misery like sunlight through smoke. You follow the sound past the well and into a narrow alley where a crowd has gathered. At the center stands a man in a faded brown robe, his hands steady, his eyes bright with both exhaustion and grace. A small cross dangles from his neck, and beside him sits a wooden chest lined with iron tools that look part kitchenware, part torture kit. This, you will learn, is Brother Aldous, the singing dentist. Not a real doctor by the standards of Paris or Salerno, but a monk trained in herbal law, anatomy, and the peculiar art of musical dentistry. He greets each patient not with a prayer or diagnosis but a melody, soft, looping, strangely comforting. Aldous's approach is unlike anything you've seen. He listens to your jaw as if it's a choir gone slightly out of tune. Ah, he murmurs, touching your cheek, the lower molar. A stubborn tenor. He chuckles at his own joke, and so do a few of the villagers, half from fear, half from habit. He begins to hum again, slow and rhythmic. Breathe with the sound, he tells you, not against it. You try. The melody vibrates in your chest, and for a moment, the pain seems to ease. It's absurd, of course. You, a grown peasant, humming along like some desperate pigeon. Yet something about it works, not a cure, but a cushion. Aldous readies his iron forceps, heated briefly over a candle flame. He hums louder now, a tune that feels older than Latin, and gestures for you to join. Historians still argue, he will later tell you, whether the sound soothes the soul or confuses the nerves. You don't care. You just want it over. When the wrenching comes, a flash of white-hot agony that fades to relief, you realize you didn't scream. You sang. Or tried to. As you spit blood into the date, Aldous dabs your lip with a linen square dipped in vinegar. He smiles, showing his own slightly crooked teeth. Better to lose one tooth than lose your song, he says softly. A joke, maybe, but one that sticks with you. You watch him tend to others, a baker with swollen gums, a shepherd whose tooth has split like old wood. Each patient hums along, off-key but brave. Aldous's tunes change, sometimes a hymn, sometimes a simple rhythm of la la la. He claims the body listens to melody the way it listens to heartbeat. The music steadies the humors, he insists, referring to the medieval theory that health is ruled by 4 bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. To modern ears, it sounds ridiculous, but in Aldous' day, this was science. He believes that when a person sings, their breath harmonizes the humors, cooling anger, easing melancholy, and reducing pain. A fringe idea, yes, but his living proof that it helps. Nearby, a child hands him a pouch of crushed mint leaves, which he mixes with honey to make a primitive mouthwash. The scent is sharp, clean, hopeful. He calls it the singer's rinse. Later, you'll find out that mint's mild antibacterial property isn't just luck, it's genuine chemistry centuries ahead of its time. The villagers adore him, partly for his kindness and partly for his songs. Rumor says Aldous once trained in a cathedral choir before turning to medicine after a vision of Saint Apollonia herself. Whether that's true, historians still argue. Some say his musical cures spread across abbeys like wildfire. Others dismiss him as a wandering eccentric. But as you watch him work, gentle, unhurried, almost serene, you can't help but think he's found something the rest of the world has missed. By evening, the crowd disperses. Aldous packs his instruments, humming as he wipes each with wine-soaked cloths. You approach him, jaw tender but heart oddly light. He looks up, eyes crinkling. The pain fades faster when you hum, he says, because you remind your body that it can make music, even while it breaks. A faint drizzle begins, turning the dirt to dark mud. You walk beside him as he returns to his small cottage near the edge of the village. The sky is lavender and smoke, the first stars trembling awake. From his window spills candlelight and the faint scent of rosemary. Inside, shelves hold jars labeled in careful Latin: salvia, murmur, vinum fortis. He hums again as he sets down his bag. Sleep well, traveler, he says, and if pain comes, sing before you couse. You smile despite yourself, clutching your sore jaw. You hum a little, off-key, on your way home. The pain still lingers, but softer now, as if part of some greater rhythm. You don't know it yet, but your path and Aldous' are now bound by melody, by pain, and by something curiously like hope. Morning returns with the smell of ash and wet wool, and you're back in the square where Brother Aldous hums over his patient's stool like a man tuning an invisible harp. You can still feel the ache ghosting along your jaw, but compared to yesterday's misery, it's bliss. The villagers call him the Singing Monk, though his official title is something like Medicus Dentarius Minor, a minor healer of the teeth. Titles in these times are flexible, usually bestowed by whoever needs your help the most. He spots you through the mist. "Ah," he says, waving with a grin, "the brave singer returns." His tone carries that mix of reverence and mischief peculiar to monks who've seen too much human suffering to take solemnity too seriously. Aldous lives between two worlds, faith and flesh, chapel and charnel house. You follow him through the crooked lanes toward his workspace, a lean-to beside the old mill, its wooden beams etched with prayers in Latin. Inside, the air hums with the faint vibration of chanting, monks in the distance, perhaps, or Aldous himself humming while he works. On the table rests a collection of objects that look more like relics than medical tools. Iron tongs, copper basins, strips of cloth stiffened with dried herbs. Everything smells faintly of vinegar and courage. He catches your expression. "Ah, yes," he murmurs. "Terrifying, aren't they? But remember, even a cruel instrument can sing if you use it gently." He demonstrates by tapping one pair of pliers against a copper bowl, 3 soft metallic notes that echo like bells. He chuckles. "Do you hear it? Every tooth has a key. The molars are low, the canines sharp, the incisors bright." You blink, unsure whether he's joking. He isn't. He pulls a small wooden flute from his belt and plays a simple tune, a scale rising and falling like breath. He explains, half to you, half to the spirits of science yet unborn, that rhythm guides the body's response to pain. If your mind expects a pulse, he says, your body obeys it. Even pain must keep time. That notion, that the body dances to rhythm, isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Medieval medicine is a mixture of logic and mysticism, of Galen's humoral theory mingled with local superstition. The four humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, yellow bile, must remain in harmony, balanced like voices in a choir. Too much heat, and you rage. Too much cold, and you languish. Aldous believes singing helps restore that balance, warming what is cool and cooling what burns. He invites you to help prepare his remedies: crushed sage leaves for cleaning the mouth, ground coral for whitening teeth, and powdered myrrh to soothe the gums. The ingredients shimmer in the morning light, turning the table into a small apothecary rainbow. He mixes them with honey, murmuring a chant beneath his breath. Is that Latin? You ask. He winks. Mostly nonsense. But nonsense sung with conviction becomes prayer. A peasant woman enters, her face pale with pain. She clutches her cheek like it's holding her soul in place. Aldous gestures for her to sit. He begins to hum again, this time a slow, lilting hymn. You recognize the pattern now: long inhale, even tone, steady release. He hums while washing his hands in vinegar, hums while examining her mouth. It's strange, almost tender. You see her shoulders relax. Then, quick as sleight of hand, he works his instrument into the hollow of her jaw. A twist, a pull, a muffled gasp, and then silence. A beat later, she's laughing. Not because it didn't hurt, but because somehow, the fear dissolved faster than the pain arrived. Aldous smiles, offering her a cloth soaked in rose water. Sing, and the pain will fade, he says softly. You help her outside, where the villagers gather again, whispering about his miracles. Some claim he's blessed by angels, others mutter witchcraft. You catch one man sneering, next he'll be telling us to dance for the plague. Aldous only laughs when you tell him. If dancing worked, I'd make the whole village waltz. Historians still argue whether Aldous ever formally studied in one of the great medical schools, Salerno, Bologna, Montpellier. His notes, preserved in fragments, hint at borrowed ideas. The rhythm of heartbeat described by Avicenna, the curative power of song praised by Hildegard of Bingen. But Aldous makes no claims of invention. Music was here before medicine, he tells you, and will remain long after. He shows you a parchment filled with cramped Latin script, his chant for extraction. Each line alternates between instruction and melody. Grip with the strength of mercy. Pull with the breath, not the hand. He laughs softly. It's less a medical text than a lullaby for the terrified. Around noon, a group of children arrives, chasing a dog. One of them, bold and snot-nosed, asks, "Brother, can singing fix my broken tooth?" Aldous crouches to inspect the boy's grin, half tooth, half chaos. "Ah," he says, "for you, a lullaby won't do. You need a hero's ballad." He strums his fingers on his knees like a drum and begins to hum an improvised tune about brave teeth marching into battle. The children howl with laughter. The dog barks in rhythm. You realize his genius isn't just medical, it's emotional. He turns fear into play, pain into performance. The villagers may come for cures, but they stay for comfort. That evening, as the sun slips behind the rooftops, Aldous walks you to the riverbank. Fireflies shimmer over the water, and the hum of crickets blends with his low voice. "You wonder why I sing?" he asks quietly. "Because it reminds me that I'm alive too. Every scream I've ever heard tries to steal a piece of me. Singing gives it back." He tosses a pebble into the current and watches the ripples fade. The day will come, he says, when pain will have new masters, powders, potions, perhaps even lightning, but until then, we have our breath. You don't reply. You're too busy listening to the water, the crickets, the steady rhythm of his humming. Somewhere in that sound, you feel the faint pulse of something larger than both of you. Not faith, not science, but the shared absurdity of humans making music against suffering. Dawn creeps in again, gray and damp, the kind of morning where even the roosters sound tired of being alive. You rise from your cot and head toward the faint singing that always seems to come from the same corner of the village. Brother Aldous is already awake, sleeves rolled up, setting his strange assortment of instruments in a careful semicircle on a table that looks like it's seen every sort of agony a human mouth can produce. You stop in the doorway, staring. These tools don't belong in any respectable chapel, unless the chapel also dabbles in mild torture. Iron tongs with teeth like little wolves. Hooks curved to slip behind molars. A slender spike with a ring handle, part dagger, part knitting needle. Aldous notices your expression and grins, a smile both saintly and suspicious. Ah, he says, the chorus of metal angels. You edge closer. They look more like demons to me. He laughs, a low rumble that echoes off the stone walls. Both, perhaps. In the wrong hands, they are punishment. In mine, I like to think they are redemption, sharp, yes, but purposeful. The tools, he explains, are forged by the village blacksmith according to designs Aldous has sketched himself. No two are identical. A tooth is like a soul, he says, each shaped by its sins. He has names for them, too: the persuader, the mercy hook, the cantor. He swears the naming helps calm his nerves before the work. If you must hurt, he says, hurt with personality. You chuckle despite the unease crawling up your spine. He gestures for you to sit at his workbench. Go on, touch them. They only bite when you stop respecting them. You pick up a pair of forceps. They are surprisingly heavy, worn smooth where countless palms have gripped them. He watches you with quiet pride. I've melted and remade them half a dozen times, he says. Iron remembers pain, you know. You must heat it until it forgets. It's a statement somewhere between metallurgy and mysticism, which, in Aldous's world, is perfectly normal. He sets aside a basin filled with herbs steeping in vinegar. The scent of sage and clove rises, sharp enough to make your eyes water. For cleansing, he says. And for courage. Both are equally important. As the morning light strengthens, a man enters the workshop, limping slightly, his jaws swollen like a ripe plum. He looks half ready to faint. Aldous greets him warmly, offers a stool, and begins his usual ritual, washing hands, humming softly, letting the sound fill the air before any words are spoken. The patient tries to talk, but Aldous hushes him with a raised finger. No speech until the song begins, he whispers, and then launches into a soft melody that sounds halfway between a psalm and a lullaby. The man stares at him, confused at first, then slowly matches the rhythm, breathing in time. Aldous explains to you in a whisper. Singing steadies the pulse. And when the pulse is steady, the body obeys. It's a fascinating logic, somewhere between physiology and poetry. You can't help thinking of modern surgeons playing music during operations, though of course Aldous knows nothing of that. He just believes the rhythm binds patient and healer in a single motion, like two rowers paddling through the same storm. He asks you to hold a small wooden mallet as he prepares the extraction. You hesitate, unsure why a mallet is involved. Ah, don't look so worried, he says, winking. It's for persuasion, not punishment. He places a thin metal lever under the man's molar and, with gentle taps, works it free. The sound, clink, tap, hum, forms a bizarre symphony of dread and grace. When it's over, Aldous inspects the bloody fragment like a jeweler appraising a flawed diamond. A fine root, he mutters. Shame it was poisoned by bread too coarse and life too hard. He drops it into a small jar of vinegar and hands the patient a cup of warm wine mixed with honey. The man, pale but smiling, presses a coin into Aldous's palm. Aldous waves it away. "Keep your silver," he says, "but hum a prayer for me next Mass." You notice how every detail of his process has rhythm, each motion, each breath. Even cleaning his instruments becomes a kind of choreography. Dip, wipe, hum, hang. When you ask where he learned such precision, he shrugs. From the choir. Timing, breath, and humility, the same skills needed for pulling teeth. He tells you how, years ago, he served as a cantor in a Benedictine monastery. "We sang 8 times a day, until one morning a brother cracked his tooth on stale bread. I helped him, and somehow never stopped helping others." Historians still argue whether monks like Aldous truly practiced dentistry or if the tales are exaggerated. Some records suggest monastic infirmaries handled everything from surgery to smallpox, while others claim they avoided blood work altogether. But Aldous is proof that necessity often trumps theology. When the bishop's jaw throbs, he says with a grin, "Suddenly God approves of experimentation." After his patient leaves, Aldous shows you his prized possession, a thin manuscript bound in leather, filled with diagrams of teeth and notes written in a script so cramped it looks like the letters are gossiping. "My masterpiece," he says, though no one reads it but the mice. He points to a sketch of a mouth annotated with musical notations. "Each tooth resonates at a different pitch," he explains. "A cracked molar distorts the body's harmony. Restore it, and the soul sings clearer." You raise an eyebrow. Do you truly believe the mouth can make the body ill? He smirks. "And you? Do you believe your heart aches only from sadness? Everything is connected. Pain hums through us like a bad note in a song. My task is to tune the instrument." There's a pause, broken only by the hum of distant bees. Later, as you share a meal of barley stew and hard bread, Aldous recounts one of his more peculiar inventions, a singing mouth mirror made of polished bronze. Supposedly, it vibrates faintly when placed near infected gums, helping him locate the troubled spot. You're skeptical, of course, but the way he describes it makes you half believe in magic. He laughs at your doubt. "Science begins with foolishness," he says. "Only later does it dress up as wisdom." Outside, thunder rolls softly in the distance. Aldous glances toward the clouds, unconcerned. "Storms cleanse the air," he murmurs. "And frightened villagers seek healers." He stands, wiping his hands. "Prepare the herbs, my friend. Tonight, we'll need both courage and song." As rain begins to fall, the workshop fills with the metallic scent of wet iron and the faint, steady hum that has become Aldous's signature. You can't help but hum along, awkwardly at first, then with growing ease. The tools gleam in the candlelight like a small orchestra waiting for its conductor. And for a strange, fleeting moment, you almost believe pain itself could be sung away. The rain lasts through the night, washing the streets clean of dust and rumor. When morning breaks, the air is soft and metallic, like the inside of a bell. You wake to the rhythmic scrape of a broom outside, Brother Aldous sweeping puddles away from his doorway while humming a melody that sounds suspiciously like joy disguised as routine. You stretch, jaw still a little sore, and step into the drizzle. The village feels gentler today. Maybe it's the music. Maybe it's that you survived medieval dentistry and lived to tell the tale. Aldous looks up, smirking. "Ah, my assistant awakes. Ready to face more teeth." You grunt. Define ready. He laughs and motions you toward the market square. A small crowd has gathered, fishermen, shepherds, even a few passing merchants. The air hums with anticipation, the way it does before a spectacle. In the center stands Aldous' stool, his chest of tools, and beside it, a trembling peasant woman with both hands pressed to her jaw. She's been in agony 3 days, whispers a bystander. Wouldn't let the priest touch her. Smart woman, Aldous mutters, setting down his satchel. He bows his head briefly in prayer, though it sounds more like a muttered negotiation. Then, to everyone's surprise, he begins to sing. It's not a hymn this time. It's something lighter, almost playful. A lilting tune that winds through the air like smoke through rafters. The villagers shift uneasily. Some cross themselves. Others can't look away. Aldous nods for the woman to join in. She hesitates, eyes wide. Breathe, he says softly. The body believes the breath before it believes the pain. She exhales. A sound escapes her lips, half sob, half hum, and then, with effort, she matches his tone. The square grows silent. Rain drips from eaves in rhythm. You can feel the pulse of the song vibrating in your ribs. Aldous works quickly, his movements precise. He warms the iron forceps in a flame, hums under his breath, then nods at her to keep singing. Her voice wavers but holds. The melody is shaky, human, brave. Then comes that small, awful moment. The twist, the pull, the release. She gasps. Then, astonishingly, laughs through her tears. The crowd exhales as one. Aldous holds up the tooth like a relic, a small white victory against centuries of suffering. There, he announces, a sin removed. Someone claps. Another joins. The square fills with a strange applause that sounds more like gratitude than entertainment. Aldous bows slightly, then winks at you. The first rule of pain, he says quietly, never let it be the loudest voice in the room. Later, back in the workshop, he explains his philosophy while you clean instruments. Pain, he says, wants attention. It wants to be sung about. So I give it a song before it demands a scream. He picks up a small wooden tablet covered in notes and sketches, his personal ledger of patients. You glimpse names and cryptic comments. Edric, howled off-key but brave. Ansel, requested psalm in D minor. Marion, sang of her sheep until she forgot her tooth. You can't help smiling. You keep records. Of course, he says. A song unsung is a cure forgotten. Historians still argue whether Aldous' patients were truly anesthetized by sound or simply distracted by it. The line between physiology and faith was thin then, and perhaps that's the point. Whatever the science, the results were undeniable. People left him lighter than they arrived. That afternoon, you accompany him on a house call beyond the village. The road winds past barley fields and crumbling shrines. The air smells of rain-soaked soil and distant sheep. A singer's work is never done, he muses. When mouths open, I must listen. The patient this time is a grizzled shepherd named Tobin, missing half his teeth already and not particularly keen on losing more. He greets Aldous with suspicion. I don't need a monk's music, he growls. Just get it over with. Aldous kneels beside him, calm as ever. Then I'll sing for myself, he says lightly. He begins a low chant, something earthy and wordless. The shepherd snorts but doesn't protest. Minutes later, as Aldous works, the man mutters a tune of his own, gruff, tuneless, but steady. When it's done, he looks dazed. Didn't hurt near as bad as I thought. Aldous pats his shoulder. You helped me more than I helped you. Back on the road, the sun breaks through, turning puddles to gold. You walk in silence for a while before asking, do you ever tire of it? The blood, the fear. Aldous thinks for a moment. Every day, he admits. But fear without purpose is just noise. I prefer to turn it into a song. He tells you a story from his youth, how, during a fever that nearly took his life, he'd heard the monks singing through the night. It wasn't the medicine that saved me, he says. It was the sound. I thought, if I survive, I'll make that sound for others. The simplicity of it lodges somewhere deep in your chest. Back at the village, a merchant from the next town over has arrived, curious about the singing dentist. He examines Aldous' setup skeptically. What's next? He scoffs. Healing bones with dancing. Aldous just grins. If it works, I'll teach you the steps. He doesn't argue or defend himself. He simply hums as he sharpens his tools, letting the mockery drift away like smoke. You notice, though, that when he hums this time, the tune is lower, slower, like a heartbeat at rest. That night, you sit outside his cottage watching fireflies blink in the grass. The village is quiet, save for the distant croak of frogs and Aldous' voice, faint through the open window, rehearsing a new melody. You realize he's composing, not chanting, a song for pain, perhaps, or for the people he's yet to meet. In a world where most healers reach for knives or prayers, Aldous reaches for rhythm. Maybe that's madness. Maybe it's genius. The stars overhead flicker like candle flames. You hum softly to yourself, the tune from the square still lingering on your tongue. Pain and song, two constants of human life, somehow feel less like opposites now, and more like companions walking the same long road. You think of Aldous' words, never let pain be the loudest voice. You decide you won't. The next morning dawns with the toll of the abbey bells, long and solemn, echoing across the valley. The sound rolls through the mist like a living thing, wrapping itself around every roof tile and cobblestone. You're awake before the first note fades. Aldous is already moving, robes flapping, humming in counterpoint to the bells as if conversing with them. Today, he says, we visit brothers of the same song. You follow him up the hillside road, winding past vineyards and wild thyme. The abbey appears like a vision, grey stone walls streaked with moss, windows that catch the dawn and turn it into gold. Inside, the air smells of beeswax, parchment, and centuries of whispered Latin. You half expect silence. Instead, faint music drifts through the corridors, low voices chanting ora et labora, pray and work. Aldous bows to a passing monk, who nods but keeps singing. The monastic tooth guild, Aldous says with mock grandeur, hardly an official order, but I like the sound of it. You raise an eyebrow. A guild. He grins. Informal, of course. But knowledge spreads best when shared over wine and prayer. He leads you to a cloistered courtyard where 3 monks sit under an archway surrounded by tools, herbs, and sheets of parchment. One sharp-eyed brother looks up, recognizes Aldous, and smiles. Brother of song, you've returned. Aldous inclines his head. And brought a witness, he says, nodding toward you. To prove that dentistry and harmony can coexist without divine lightning. The monks chuckle. One gestures for you both to sit. You notice each of them wears a small leather pouch around the neck, a mix of crucifix, charm, and perhaps something practical. Tooth dust, one explains cheerfully when he catches you staring. Crushed coral and myrrh. Keeps the rot away. Or so we tell ourselves. On the table lies a strange sight, a jawbone carved from wood, its teeth fitted with removable pegs. Aldous picks it up reverently. For teaching, he explains. Each peg a lesson in patience. He demonstrates how to maneuver a pair of crude forceps, showing angles, leverage, the dance between precision and prayer. The monks nod along, murmuring corrections and suggestions like scholars arguing over a hymn. It feels oddly modern, an exchange of data centuries before anyone would call it that. Historians still argue whether such monastic tooth guilds truly existed. The written record is thin, and much of what survives sounds more rumor than fact. But looking at this courtyard, at men who heal and sing in the same breath, you begin to think legends grow from very real seeds. Brother Matthias, the eldest of the trio, leans in. "You still make them sing, Aldous?" he asks, voice raspy but kind. Aldous smiles. "Always." The voice steadies the pulse steadies the hand. "Besides, if I must cause pain, I prefer it to have a melody." Matthias chuckles. "You'll make the physicians of Paris weep with laughter." "Let them," Aldous replies. "While they laugh, I'll heal." They shower a jug of thin ale, and talk drifts to new herbal recipes: powdered staghorn for whitening, crushed oyster shells for enamel strength, dried rose petals for scent. Aldous listens intently, jotting notes in his little book. You realize he's part healer, part scholar, part performance artist, equal measures curiosity and compassion. One of the monks, Brother Eustace, presents a small glass vial of dark green oil. "Mint steeped in vinegar," he says. "A miracle for the breath and, occasionally, the spirit." Aldous takes a deep sniff and nearly sneezes. "It smells like holy fire," he laughs. "Perfect." They spend hours trading remedies and rhymes. Some are serious, like combining ground clove and salt to numb the gums. Others purely absurd, such as reciting psalms backward while holding a rabbit's foot. "Superstition is simply hope dressed strangely," Aldous says. "If it helps them, I'll allow it." Later, in the Abbey scriptorium, a young novice copies a text on anatomy. You glance over his shoulder and see crude illustrations of mouths and jaws, the Latin labels half correct. Aldous points at one. "You've drawn too few roots on the molar, brother. God prefers 3s, not 2s. The novice blushes and corrects it. As afternoon light filters through stained glass, Aldous and the monks gather for chant. You join them, awkward but willing. The sound rises, layer by layer, deep drones, bright tones, shimmering overtones that seem to vibrate in your bones. It's both haunting and healing. You understand, at last, how Aldous sees connection between body and song. When the final note fades, silence rushes in like a blessing. Matthias turns to Aldous. "Your theory of harmony, it reminds me of the writings of Hildegard. She says every living thing vibrates with divine music." Aldous nods. "I've read her. I think she's right." The others exchange glances. "You've read her?" one asks, incredulous. "Her letters are rare." Aldous grins. "One reached me by accident, wrapped around fish." You laugh aloud before you can stop yourself. Aldous shrugs. Truth hides in odd places. Evening falls. The Abbey refectory fills with candlelight and the smell of lentil stew. You sit among the monks as Aldous recounts stories of his patients. Those who sang, those who fainted, those who left toothless but blessed. They listen, amused, perhaps skeptical, yet undeniably charmed. Before you depart, Brother Matthias gives Aldous a small brass bell. "For timing," he says. "Let the ring mark your rhythm." Aldous bows deeply, slipping it into his pouch. Every pull will now begin with prayer and end with a chime. Outside, stars spill across the sky like spilled salt. The road back to the village glows faintly under moonlight. Aldous walks beside you in content silence for a long while before murmuring, "Do you hear it? The world hums when the heart is full." You tilt your head. The night is quiet except for crickets and your footsteps. "No," he insists softly. "Listen closer." Even silence sings. You do. And though you can't name the sound, you think you catch it, a faint vibration in the still air, like the echo of everything that's ever lived. You don't realize how far Aldous' songs travel until the next morning, when a merchant caravan stops by the village well and someone hums one of his tunes. You recognize it instantly, the pulling song, that rhythmic pattern of 4 beats and a sigh. The merchant laughs when you ask where he heard it. In ruin, he says. Some monk pulls teeth and makes his patients sing. Said the tune keeps the demons of pain asleep. Aldous just smiles when you tell him. Muse moves faster when it has a melody, he says, returning to polishing his bell, the one brother Matthias gave him. And demons hate good rhythm. The morning is golden, the air buzzing with bees. Aldous seems unusually contemplative today. He walks with his hands clasped behind his back, his gaze flicking between sky and earth as if reading something written across both. You've seen what we do, he says softly. Now you should know why we do it. He leads you to the hill overlooking the river, a quiet spot where the reeds bend like listening ears. The world, he says, is made of sound. Every living thing vibrates. The ancients knew this, though they spoke of it in riddles. The Greeks called it the music of the spheres. He gestures at the sky. The heavens sing, they said. Each planet a note, each orbit a measure. And we, poor mortals, echo their harmony, or fall out of tune. It's the first time he's spoken so directly about his philosophy, and you realize he isn't merely performing miracles for villagers, he's building a worldview out of melody and mercy. When someone screams, he continues, their sound is jagged, broken. But when they sing, even through pain, they rejoin the cosmic choir. You smirk. So your dental practice is actually theology. He chuckles. Aren't they all? But don't tell the bishop. Historians still argue whether medieval scholars genuinely believed in the physical healing power of sound or whether such theories were metaphorical. In Aldous' day, medicine and mysticism danced together so tightly that no one could see where one ended and the other began. The body was a vessel of humors, the soul a vessel of tone. Aldous stoops to pick a wildflower, twirling it absently. Hildegard of Bingen said that singing is breathing made holy, he murmurs. I think she was right. Every exhale is a chance to balance what's broken. Back in the village, he sets to work constructing something new, a curious wooden contraption with strings stretched across a hollow box. It looks like a dulcimer that's lost its confidence. You help him fix the pegs, and he plucks a few tentative notes. I call it the tooth harp, he says proudly. You can't help but laugh. Why on earth do you need that? For science, he replies. And for amusement. The idea, he explains, is to test how vibration affects the nerves. He places one end of the harp against his jaw and strums gently. The sound resonates through his skull, a soft hum that makes your own teeth buzz in sympathy. You see, he says, eyes gleaming. Music is touch, invisible but real. Later, he convinces you to try. The first vibration feels strange, ticklish. The second sends a faint tingle through your gums. By the third, you're giggling helplessly. It's like being kissed by a beehive, you say. Aldous laughs. An excellent description for my next manuscript. Word spreads fast, of course. Within hours, half the village has come to witness the buzzing miracle. Aldous sits in his chair like a conductor, letting each brave soul hold the harp to their jaw while he strums. Some claim their toothaches lessen, others simply enjoy the novelty. Either way, the air fills with laughter and song. That evening, Aldous writes furiously by candlelight, sketching diagrams of vibration lines and jawbones. He murmurs as he works. If the hum aligns with the pulse, Perhaps the pain recedes. You recognize that obsessive glint in his eye, the look of someone chasing an idea halfway between discovery and madness. You ask if he's worried the church might frown on all this experimentation. He shrugs. The church frowns at everything until it starts smiling. He pauses then, gazing into the flame. Still, I tread carefully. Too much curiosity once got a monk burned. There's truth in that. Medieval Europe isn't kind to those who question divine order. Yet Aldous' defiance is quiet, rooted in kindness rather than pride. If song eases suffering, he says simply, then silence is the greater sin. Over the next few days, the village becomes his laboratory. You help him test rhythms, slow chants, quick melodies, high tones and low. He records which seem to calm patients fastest. A pattern emerges, lower frequencies steady breathing, higher ones distract the mind. It's primitive science, but real observation nonetheless. Music touches the body before it reaches the brain, he says one night, sketching wave-like lines on parchment. Perhaps one day healers will use pure sound to mend flesh. You grin. So future doctors will sing instead of cut. Maybe both, he says. Harmony and knife, side by side. By now, his fame has drawn attention from neighboring villages. A messenger arrives, a lean man on horseback, wearing the crest of a minor noble. Lord Devereux requests your presence, he says grandly, to treat a matter of urgent discomfort. Aldous sighs, rubbing his temples. Nobles always have urgent discomfort, usually caused by eating too much sugar bread. Still, he packs his tools, wraps the tooth harp in linen, and rings the brass bell once before leaving. Come, he tells you. You'll see how melody fares against money. The journey to the manor takes half a day. You travel through orchards and muddy lanes, the air thick with the scent of apples and wet horses. Aldous hums most of the way, his voice steady, unbothered by the prospect of facing nobility. Pain, he says, has no class. At sunset, the manor appears, a stone fortress with banners drooping in the humid air. Servants rush to greet you. Inside, the hall is filled with perfumed smoke and anxious whispers. The Baron, it seems, has been roaring in agony for 3 nights straight. Aldous straightens his robe and glances at you. Ready your ears, he says. We're about to make history, or a very loud mistake. The Baron's screams echo through the manor before you even reach the door. They are primal, stretched raw, the kind of sound that makes a man's spine shrink. Aldous merely adjusts his belt pouch and sighs. Ah, he murmurs, the sweet overture of infection. A servant ushers you both into the great hall, which is part hospital, part stage, tapestries hanging limp in the smoky air, a fire crackling with more desperation than warmth. On a grand bed draped in crimson silk lies Lord Devereux himself, red-faced, sweating, and clutching the side of his jaw like he's trying to keep his soul from escaping through his teeth. Who in God's name are you? He bellows when he sees Aldous. Merely a humble dentist of melody, Aldous replies with a small bow. And this, he gestures toward you, is my recorder of phenomena. The Baron's eyes narrow. Recorder. Aldous leans in conspiratorially. They write down all the clever things I say, so I don't have to repeat them. You nearly choke trying not to laugh. The chamber stinks of clove oil, vinegar, and fear. A priest stands nearby, muttering prayers over a bowl of salt water. Aldous nods respectfully, then steps closer to inspect the Baron's swollen cheek. An abscess, he mutters. Left too long. Likely the molars gone black inside. The priest frowns. We have prayed. And God has clearly asked for backup, Aldous says, rolling up his sleeves. The servants glance at each other nervously. My lord, one whispers, perhaps we should fetch the surgeon from. No, the Baron growls, clutching the sheets. The last one bled me till I fainted. Let this singer try. Aldous inclines his head. Your confidence flatters me. Now, I will need quiet, and a little rhythm. From his satchel he produces the tooth harp, its polished surface gleaming in the candlelight. Gasps ripple through the room. You're going to play his toothache, someone whispers. Precisely, Aldous says cheerfully, positioning the instrument on the bedside table. Everybody has a key, and this man's key is E-flat misery. He plucks a few gentle notes, the tones shimmering through the air. The Baron growls, then blinks, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. Aldous nods approvingly. See? Even pain can't resist a good tune. Then he signals for you to hold the brass bell. When I nod, he whispers, strike once. It focuses the pulse. The procedure begins with quiet gravity. Aldous wipes the Baron's gums with his mint vinegar oil, murmuring a chant under his breath, something between a lullaby and a prayer. The harp hums softly as he plucks a repeating phrase, low and slow. The Baron's breathing syncs with it. Inhale, exhale, like a tide. Now, my lord, Aldous says soothingly, when I say sing, you will hum this note. He touches the harp string again, producing a steady hum. It may hurt less if you think of it as a duet. The priest looks appalled. A duet? During treatment? Aldous winks. Would you rather he scream? He positions the forceps carefully. Sing, he commands. The Baron inhales, and to everyone's astonishment, begins to hum. Badly, off-key, but sincerely. The sound wavers, cracks, steadies again. Aldous nods in rhythm, humming along. Then, with one swift, practiced twist, he pulls. There's a dull pop, then silence. You almost don't believe it's over until Aldous drops the tooth into a bowl of water. The Baron blinks, dazed. That didn't hurt as much as. Music, Aldous says softly, is an anesthetic that leaves no stain. The priest crosses himself. That was sorcery. Science, Aldous corrects gently. But I forgive the confusion. You ring the bell once, its clear note cutting through the heavy air like a sigh of release. The Baron laughs weakly, touching his cheek. It feels lighter. Aldous smiles, modest as ever. The body is a choir, my lord. I merely tuned one voice. Historians still argue whether such musical surgeries were truly practiced or just apocryphal tales passed from village to village. But watching Aldous now, his calm precision, his fearless empathy, you understand why legends might have sprung from men like him. The Baron insists on rewarding him with a pouch of coins, but Aldous declines. Donate to the abbey instead, he says. They need candles more than I need silver. That humility surprises even the priest. You're an odd man, he mutters. Aldous grins. The best kind. Before leaving, Aldous asks to keep the extracted tooth. A relic, he says. He scrubs it clean, inspects the roots, then pockets it with an almost fond sigh. Each one tells a story, he murmurs. Outside, dusk spreads across the manor grounds, crickets chirping like 1,000 tiny harps. You walk together toward the gate, both quiet for a time. Then Aldous speaks, almost wistfully. That man's pride was louder than his pain. But for a moment, he listened. You glance at him. Do you ever tire of healing people who think you're mad? He chuckles. Frequently. But madness is just curiosity with a bad reputation. The road back to the village winds through dark woods. You light a small lantern, the glow carving halos in the mist. Aldous hums softly as he walks, testing new melodies against the rhythm of your footsteps. Occasionally, he stops to jot a note. The hum before dawn, he mutters, I must find its key someday. You reach the village long after midnight. The square is empty except for a stray cat sitting on a barrel, grooming itself with regal boredom. Aldous bows to it gravely. Even royalty must maintain hygiene, he says, deadpan. The cat blinks. You laugh. In the quiet that follows, Aldous sits on the fountain's edge, pulling out the Baron's tooth and holding it up to the moonlight. See that, he says. A tiny cathedral. Pain carved its arches, and now it's free. You can't help but feel that you've just witnessed something miraculous, not merely in the pulling of a tooth, but in the weaving of courage, compassion, and absurdity into something transcendent. When you finally part ways for the night, Aldous's song still hangs in the air. It's not cheerful, exactly, but tender, a melody stitched with hope. And as you lie awake, you realize you're humming it too, your voice trembling just enough to make you feel human. The next morning, the Baron's success has already become myth. By sunrise, half the valley knows of the singing dentist who cured a noble without blood or blade. Children hum his melody while fetching water, and gossip flits through the market stalls like sparrows. Aldous, however, looks faintly exasperated. A miracle, he mutters, is simply a rumor with good lighting. You find him sitting by the fountain, tuning the tooth harp with slow precision. The trouble with miracles, he says, plucking a note that hangs in the morning air, is that people expect them on command. As if to prove his point, a farmer rushes up, hat in hand. Master Aldous, my cousin in Bears has the rot. Can you sing her teeth back? Aldous sighs but smiles kindly. If her teeth are willing to listen, perhaps. You can't tell if he's joking. That day, Aldous decides to journey farther afield, beyond the familiar valley, toward towns that lie along the old Roman road. Music travels, he tells you, but I must make sure it's traveling truthfully. He packs light, a satchel of herbs, the tooth harp, a spare quill, and a bundle of linen. Before leaving, he gives a wink to the baker's daughter, who's been watching shyly from her doorway. Remember to chew on sage, he calls, not on gossip. The road stretches wide and empty, sun shimmering on the cobbles. You walk beside him, dust rising with every step. He hums occasionally, testing how the landscape echoes back his tune. Hills, he muses, sing in minor keys. Valleys prefer major. The earth has moods. After several miles, you reach a small town known for its market fays, rows of colorful tents, the smell of roasted chestnuts, the clang of blacksmith hammers. Aldous's arrival causes a mild stir. Someone recognizes him instantly. That's the one who cured Lord Devereux, a merchant whispers. The singing tooth puller. Aldous bows theatrically. A pleasure, as always, to meet my reputation before I do. He sets up near the edge of the square. No stall, no banner, just his stool and harp. I prefer to appear unannounced, he tells you. Surprises are good for business and better for faith. Before long, a small crowd gathers. The first patient, an elderly woman with cheeks sunken and eyes bright, complains of a tooth that aches whenever the moon is full. Aldous nods solemnly. Ah yes, lunar molarism. Very hair. Requires a moonlit melody. You stifle a laugh as he begins to hum softly. The woman closes her eyes, swaying slightly. With delicate precision, Aldous applies his mint oil, murmuring the rhythm under his breath. The crowd watches, wide-eyed. When he finally pulls the tooth free, the woman gasps, then starts laughing, deep, hearty, relieved. Did it hurt? Someone calls. Only until he started the song. she replies. And just like that, Aldous' legend grows again. Historians still argue whether these performances were genuine medicine or elaborate theatre. But to those watching that day, it doesn't matter. Healing is happening, or at least, hope is. By late afternoon, Aldous has treated 4 more patients. A butcher with a chipped molar, a weaver with swollen gums, a boy who swears he swallowed a tooth and now hears it singing inside him. Aldous handles each case with the same serene absurdity. If the tooth sings, he tells the boy, it means it's happy where it is. Between patients, he plays gentle tunes on his harp, melodies that drift over the market like invisible incense. People pause mid-bargain just to listen. You notice the same pattern as before. When Aldous plays, the air seems to soften, voices quiet, tempers ease. Even the livestock tethered nearby stop fidgeting. It's as if the whole town is exhaling in harmony. As dusk approaches, a friar approaches the makeshift clinic. His robe is travel-stained, his expression wary. "Master Aldous," he says, "the bishop's men have heard of your methods." Aldous raises an eyebrow. "Ah, the speed of gossip never disappoints." They question. The friar continues carefully, "Whether your singing cures are godly or otherwise." Aldous' tone remains calm. "Tell them I use what God already made, the voice, the breath, and the courage to endure." The friar hesitates, then leans closer. "They've also heard you claim to align planets and humors with tone." Aldous grins. "Did I claim it, or merely suggest it with poetic flair?" The friar looks pained. "There's talk of inquiry. I advise discretion." When he leaves, Aldous exhales slowly. "Ah, the inevitable." You frown. "You think they'll accuse you of heresy?" He shrugs. "It wouldn't be the first time curiosity offended heaven's representatives." Then he adds, almost cheerfully, "But worry not. Heresy sounds more dramatic than it lives." That night, you camp on the edge of town beneath a sky full of cold stars. Aldous hums softly by the fire, tuning his harp by starlight. "The constellations," he says, "remind me of teeth, shining fragments arranged in patterns we pretend to understand." You grin. "And the moon?" He looks up. "Ah, the moon is a patient. Forever half-healed." He laughs quietly at his own metaphor, and for a moment, he seems simply human, tired, content, brilliant in an unguarded way. But later, as you drift toward sleep, you hear him whisper to the darkness, "If they silence the song, what happens to the healing?" It's not a question for you, it's for the night itself. By morning, the market square is abuzz again, but Aldous is already packing. When men in robes begin to whisper, he says, "It's time to change key." You follow him down the road, the sound of the tooth harp fading behind you like a memory. Somewhere, a church bell tolls, a reminder that harmony always shares a border with heresy. Onward, then, Aldous says, smiling faintly. "Let's see who else is out of tune." The morning fog curls low across the fields, turning the world ghostly and hushed. Aldous walks with his hood drawn up, the tooth harp slung across his back like a pilgrim's relic. "We'll take the forest path," he says, "less chance of priests and politics." The trees soon swallow the road, and the air grows damp, rich with moss and the distant drip of dew. You can hear the faint hum of bees somewhere, and Aldous smiles. "They never forget their pitch," he muses. "If monks prayed like bees, we'd have less sin and better honey." It's a long walk. You pass a shepherd who swears the woods are haunted, and a tanner who claims the ghost of Charlemagne rides through here on foggy nights. Aldous waves it all away with a lazy grin. "Ghosts are only memories that refuse to die," he says. "And honestly, I rather like their company." By noon, You reach a small riverside hamlet, a few cottages, a mill, a chapel no bigger than a stable. The people here look poorer, thinner, their smiles uncertain. A woman hails Aldous the moment he appears. "Are you the singing man?" she asks breathlessly. "My boy can't eat," his face swelled up like a turnip. Aldous nods gravely. "Then let's see what Melody can manage." Inside the cottage, the boy sits trembling, one cheek grotesquely puffed. His mother wrings her hands, whispering prayers. Aldous kneels beside him, placing a hand gently on the boy's arm. "Breathe," he says softly. "We'll make the pain hum away." He opens his satchel, preparing the mint oil and linen. Then, turning to you, he murmurs, "Keep the rhythm." You nod and begin tapping the edge of the wooden table, slow and steady. Aldous hums, low, deep, almost like a lullaby. The sound fills the small room, vibrating through the rafters. The boy, terrified but curious, begins to hum along, tentative at first, then more surely. When Aldous finally draws the infected tooth, there's a short cry, then quiet. He rinses the wound, hums once more, and nods to the mother. "Give him broth, not bread. And keep singing till sunrise." The woman bursts into tears of gratitude. "Bless you," she says, pressing a loaf of barley bread into his hands. Aldous smiles faintly. "Keep it. Feed him instead." Outside, you both sit on the grass, letting the river breeze dry the sweat from your brows. "Sometimes," Aldous says quietly, "I wish I could keep them all singing forever." "Wouldn't that be chaos?" you ask. He chuckles. "Yes. A beautiful one." For a while, neither of you speak. The river murmurs. A heron glides low across the water, its reflection trailing like a ribbon. Aldous plucks a single note on his harp. "You hear that?" he asks. The bird matches pitch. "Nature's more cooperative than men." You grin. "Even the birds approve your methods." He looks away, a shadow crossing his expression. "I'm not sure the bishops will." His right to worry. Later that day, as you pass through a crossroads, you find a parchment nailed to a post, an ecclesiastical notice, bearing a wax seal and bold black lettering. Inquiry into heretical healing practices using song and unnatural devices. Aldous' name isn't written, but his legend echoes between the lines. He studies it silently for a long moment, then tears off the bottom corner. "I'll take a souvenir," he says dryly. "Proof I once mattered enough to frighten someone." Historians still argue whether the medieval church actively pursued men like Aldous or simply tolerated them as curiosities until their fame grew inconvenient. Some records hint at inquisitors traveling disguised as friars, taking notes on folk healers who blurred the line between miracle and blasphemy. That evening, you find shelter in an abandoned chapel by the river. Dust motes drift through fading light. Aldous kneels where the altar once stood and begins softly tuning his harp. "Music was prayer before we learned to kneel," he murmurs. You sit beside him, watching as he strikes a quiet series of tones. The sound rolls through the cracked walls, reverberating like the breath of the building itself. Then he speaks, voice low and reflective. "Every tooth I pull feels like a confession. They come to me with pain and leave lighter, freer. Isn't that what priests claim to do?" You tilt your head. You think of yourself as a priest. He laughs softly. "Heavens, no. I think of myself as a reminder that grace doesn't always wear robes." The candlelight flickers, throwing his shadow tall against the crumbling stone. He looks older in that glow, not in years but in weariness, the toll of carrying belief that's too strange for his age. After a long silence, he turns to you. "You're writing all this down, aren't you?" You nod. "Every word." Good, he says. If they burn me, I want someone to remember the tune. You try to laugh it off, but there's a tremor in his voice that lingers after the sound fades. When morning comes, mist cloaks the river again. Aldous stands at the threshold, the tooth harp slung across his shoulder. I've been thinking, he says. If the bishops send for me, I'll go. Let them listen. Maybe they'll hear something holy before they call it heresy. You raise an eyebrow. You'll walk willingly into an inquiry. He smiles. The trick to facing judgment is singing louder than the gavel. The road ahead splits in two, one path toward the coast, the other toward the cathedral city. Aldous doesn't hesitate. Come, he says. Let's give the church something to argue about. And as you follow him down that long, uncertain road, you can't help but hum the same tune he taught the villagers, a fragile, stubborn melody, half prayer, half defiance. The cathedral city rises from the horizon like a mirage of stone, spires piercing the pale sky, bells tolling faintly through the haze. You can hear the hum of thousands of voices, market cries tangled with church chants, the great heartbeat of civilization. Aldous pauses on the hilltop, staring down at it with an unreadable smile. Beautiful, he says softly. Like a hymn built by skeptics. You descend into the bustle together. The streets are narrow, slick with mud and humanity, merchants shouting, beggars praying, apprentices chasing chickens. Somewhere above it all, the cathedral bells ring again, impossibly precise, as though the city itself is keeping time. Aldous seems almost boyishly excited. Do you hear that? He says, pointing upward. Each bell is tuned to a different interval. Major third, perfect fifth, octave. Even God's house knows the value of harmony. You grin. Do you think they'll welcome a singing dentist? Only if they're out of pain, he replies dryly. At the city gate, two guards stop you. They eye Aldous' harp suspiciously. You a minstrel or a monk? One demands. Both, on a good day, Aldous says. Today, I'm simply a visitor seeking conversation. The guard frowns but waves you through. Inside, the smell of bread and tallow candles mingles with incense. The city feels alive in every sense. Bright, anxious, electric. You follow Aldous through winding alleys until he stops before an inn called the Pilgrim's Rest. Neutral ground, he explains. If the bishop's men want to find me, I'd rather they do it over supper than summons. The innkeeper, a stout woman with laugh lines and suspicion in equal measure, greets him warmly. You the one who makes folks sing while you hurt 'em? Aldous grins. Only till they stop hurting. She snorts. Then you're welcome. Plenty of customers with more pain than teeth. He sets up in a corner room that smells of ale and rosemary. Word spreads fast, as always. Within an hour, there's a queue of city-folk, merchants, servants, even a few curious scholars. Aldous works steadily, his gentle hum weaving through the clatter of tankards and murmured prayers. His methods, though strange, fascinate the watching crowd. He explains each step in calm, patient tones. The mouth is the gate of courage, he says at one point. It opens for song, for speech, and, unfortunately, for pain. I simply remind it which uses nobler. A young apprentice asks if singing really lessens pain. Aldous shrugs. Perhaps it doesn't. But it gives the mind something better to do than suffer. By dusk, the inn feels transformed. The firelight flickers against faces that are both awed and skeptical. Someone starts clapping after a successful extraction. Someone else tries to harmonize with Aldous' tune. Laughter breaks out, rich and nervous. Historians still argue whether this scene, a healer serenading his patients in a tavern, ever truly occurred, or whether later chroniclers embroidered it for charm. But the details ring plausible. Medieval taverns often doubled as clinics for barbers and tooth drawers, and the mingling of faith, music, and medicine was not as rare as it sounds. Aldous wipes his hands, exhausted but smiling. "We're all born out of tune," he tells the innkeeper, "but every act of kindness is a note that brings us closer." She eyes him shrewdly. "You sound like a preacher." "Not yet," he says. "But give me another drink." You both laugh. Later that night, just as the laughter is fading, a quiet knock interrupts the calm. A thin man in clerical robes stands in the doorway. His face is pale, his expression polite but unreadable. "Master Aldous?" he asks. Aldous nods. "At your service, or disservice, depending on your purpose." The man smiles faintly. "The bishop requests your presence tomorrow morning. There are questions about your practices." Aldous sighs. Questions never come without answers prearranged. Nevertheless, the cleric replies, "Attendance is expected." When he leaves, silence fills the room like a weight. The innkeeper crosses herself. "They'll try to make a show of you," she warns. "The bishop's court doesn't like wonder it can't claim credit for." Aldous shrugs, though his fingers tap nervously on the table. "Then I'll make them sing too." He turns to you. "Rest well. Tomorrow may be loud." The next morning dawns grey and solemn. The cathedral square is already crowded when you arrive. Townsfolk, priests, and a scattering of nobles. The great bronze doors stand open, revealing a cavern of light and echo. Aldous walks steadily, barefoot now, his harp slung across his shoulder like a sword. Inside, the bishop sits on a raised chair, surrounded by clerics scribbling notes. His voice is smooth as silk and twice as sharp. "You are Aldous of Noyon, known for unconventional methods of healing." Aldous bows slightly. "Known, yes. Guilty, only of singing in key." A murmur ripples through the crowd. The bishop steeples his fingers. "It is said you claim song can replace pain, and that you practice without blessing or license." "I claim only that mercy should be audible," Aldous replies. "Blasphemy often sounds poetic," the bishop says coolly. You feel your pulse quicken. The air in the cathedral is heavy with incense and judgment. Aldous stands unflinching. "If music offends heaven," he says softly, "then why did God give us lungs?" A collective gasp follows. You can almost hear the quills scratching faster. The bishop gestures to one of his aides. "Bring the witness." A small boy steps forward, the same child Aldous healed by the river. His face is bright, healthy. "This man cured me," the boy says shyly. "He sang, and it stopped hurting." The bishop studies him, then turns back to Aldous. "You understand how dangerous this appears?" Aldous smiles faintly. "Yes, my lord. It appears kind." For the first time, the bishop hesitates. The silence that follows is fragile, trembling, almost holy. And in that stillness, Aldous raises his harp and plucks a single note. It reverberates through the cathedral, long and pure. Every sound seems to bow to it. The whisper of robes, the creak of pews, even breath itself. "Listen," he says. "You can hear the truth vibrate." The cathedral air hums long after that final note fades, hanging between awe and accusation. You can feel every gaze in the room fixed on Aldous. The bishop's cold scrutiny, the cleric's tight-lipped disapproval, the townsfolk's breathless curiosity. The sound he conjured still trembles in the arches, refusing to die quietly. The bishop clears his throat, the sound sharp enough to cut the spell. "Enough theatrics," he says. "We are not here for music." Aldous bows slightly. "Then you're here for silence, my lord. And I'm afraid that's not my specialty." A ripple of nervous laughter stirs among the younger priests, quickly smothered by the bishop's glare. He signals two clerics to escort Aldous forward. They guide him to a small wooden chair in the center of the hall, a makeshift witness seat that feels more like a stage. "Do you deny," the bishop begins, "that you practice healing arts without sanction of the church?" "I deny only the idea that mercy needs paperwork," Aldous replies. "You extract teeth, you mix herbs, you invoke sound as remedy, all without the blessing of holy order. How do you justify this?" "By success," Aldous says simply. "If they leave my hands healed and grateful, perhaps the blessing found its way there without me." The bishop frowns. "Your arrogance borders on sacrilege." "Only borders," Aldous says with a soft grin. "Then I've still time to cross." You wince internally. He's brilliant, but his tongue is a reckless thing, half sword, half song. The bishop, unamused, gestures for silence. "You speak of sound as if it holds divine power. Do you claim to perform miracles?" Aldous hesitates just long enough to make every scribe lean closer. "No," he says finally. "I only remind the body what it's already capable of." "Blasphemy," mutters one of the clerics under his breath. Aldous hears him. "Is it blasphemy to believe the Creator tuned us well?" The crowd shifts uneasily. Historians still argue whether this exchange actually took place or was embellished later by sympathetic chroniclers. Some versions of the tale insist Aldous performed a spontaneous demonstration. Others claim he was silenced before he could play another note. But in the version passed down through the centuries, the one whispered by night watchmen and traveling bards, he does the unthinkable. He asks for a volunteer. The bishop raises an eyebrow. "A volunteer? This is not a fairground." "Then let it be a chapel," Aldous says gently. "Surely there's no harm in showing mercy in a house built for it." The bishop, perhaps out of pride, perhaps curiosity, agrees. "Very well. If one among you wishes to be healed by song, step forward. And let all witness whether noise can rival prayer." A man steps forth, a mason, judging by his calloused hands. He clutches his jaw, grimacing. "It's been aching for months," he mutters. Aldous nods. "Then we'll borrow the cathedral's echo. It's the best acoustics I've ever worked with." The bishop sits back, arms crossed. "Proceed." Aldous kneels before the mason, sets his harp across his lap, and strikes a deep, resonant chord. The note blooms outward, climbing the ribbed arches and circling down again like invisible birds. Then, softly, he begins to hum, low, steady, almost like breathing. You can feel it in your chest, the vibrations spreading through pews and stone. The mason's shoulders ease. His jaw slackens. A single tear slips from his eye, though whether from pain or relief, no one can tell. Aldous lifts a hand, signaling for the man to hum along. The mason does, hesitant, trembling, but soon his tone aligns with Aldous's. The two voices blend, pure and strange and haunting. Even the bishop cannot hide his fascination. After a minute, Aldous stops. The mason touches his face, astonished. "It doesn't hurt," he whispers. The crowd gasps. A scribe drops his quill. The bishop quickly stands. "Coincidence," he declares. "The Lord in his mercy chose this moment to act." Aldous nods humbly. "Then we're in agreement. Mercy was present." That answer infuriates the bishop more than open rebellion could have. "Enough," he snaps. "You will cease these practices at once. The church will determine what is fit to call healing and what is heresy." Aldous bows. "And if the church forgets the tune?" "Then it will be silence," the bishop warns. Aldous looks up, his expression soft, almost sad. then you'll never hear the angels. The guards step forward, unsure whether to arrest or simply escort him out. The bishop, perhaps realizing public punishment might spark sympathy, waves them off. Let him go. His reputation will hang him faster than rope. As you leave the cathedral, the sunlight seems too bright, almost mocking. Aldous walks quietly beside you, his harp silent for once. You could have played safe, you murmur. I did, he says. Just not for myself. He buys bread from a vendor and breaks it in half, handing you a piece. Funny, he muses, how they think faith ends where fear begins. Later that night, back at the inn, he sits by the fire, tuning the harp again. They'll write lies, he says softly. They always do. But lies have short melodies. You can't help but ask, will you stop? He smiles faintly. Would you stop breathing if someone said it was heresy? Outside, rain begins to fall, gentle, rhythmic, like the world humming back. Aldous listens, head tilted. Every storm has its harmony, he murmurs. You just have to hear past the thunder. And though the city sleeps around you, rumors already slither through the streets, of a heretic who healed with hymns, a madman who made the cathedral itself sing. Some call him dangerous. Others, divine. Historians still argue which was closer to the truth. But that night, by the crackling hearth, you know only this. You've witnessed something impossible, something both fragile and fierce, a melody that refuses to bow. You wake to the sound of church bells, urgent, metallic, and far too early. Aldous is already awake, sitting by the window with his harp across his knees, plucking at strings too quietly for anyone but you to hear. His face is drawn, his eyes red from a night without sleep. They've been ringing since dawn, you murmur. Summoning, he says simply. Bishops don't like being upstaged. Especially by melody. You cross to the window and peer out. A light mist hangs over the square. Town criers shout news, half rumor, half warning. Aldous of Noyon, questioned for unlicensed healing and mystical seduction of the sick. The phrasing is pure theater, written to spark fear. Aldous just laughs softly. Mystical seduction of the sick, now that's a new one. Do they imagine I'm serenading cavities into sin? You're taking this well, you say, though the tension in your chest disagrees. He shrugs. When the powerful are frightened, it's usually because the powerless remembered they can sing. By mid-morning, a small crowd gathers outside the Pilgrim's Rest. Not the angry kind, surprisingly, the curious kind. Merchants, midwives, even a few monks with their hoods drawn low. They whisper his name like it's a charm. Aldous steps outside, harp slung casually, and smiles at them. No appointments today, he calls. Just stories. A cheer goes up. Someone shouts, tell the one about the tooth that cursed a knight. Aldous grins. Ah, yes. The knight who swore his molar had a demon inside. I told him demons prefer richer lodgings. Laughter ripples through the crowd. Even the passing guards pause to listen. There's something disarming about him, equal parts mischief and mercy. He begins to play, the notes rippling like sunlight on water. The tension in the air softens. Children dance. Women hum along. Historians still argue, you whisper to yourself, whether moments like this were real or imagined. But as you watch faces relax, voices rise, and fear dissolve into laughter, it's hard to believe it was anything but true. Aldous ends the tune with a wink. Music, he says, is cheaper than penance and far more fun. As the crowd disperses, you notice a cloaked figure at the edge of the square, tall, still, watching. A messenger, perhaps. When you glance again, he's gone. Aldous sees your expression. They'll come again tonight, he says quietly. The church never ends with one inquiry. Then what will you do? He looks out toward the cathedral spire, gleaming like a blade in the grey light. Sing louder. You follow him to the riverbank that evening. The mist rolls low again, the same ghostly veil from the day you met. Aldous sits on a fallen log, carving symbols into a smooth bit of driftwood. What's that, you ask? Resonance marker, he replies. A reminder that sound lives longer than we do. Bury one of these anywhere I've sung, and the echo stays, like a seed. You turn the carving in your hand. You believe that? I've heard worse doctrines preached for tithes. You laugh softly, but he doesn't. His tone is wistful now. When I was an apprentice, he says, my master told me every note we play writes itself into the air. Invisible ink for God's diary. I like that thought. Makes living less lonely. The wind rises, carrying the smell of damp earth and riverweed. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howls, thin and mournful. Aldous listens. Even the beasts sing, he murmurs. Only men forget how. He stands suddenly. Come on. There's something I need you to see. You follow him upriver, the moon breaking through clouds in silver flashes. The trees open onto a small glade, and there, half hidden in ivy, is a ruin. The remains of an old chapel, roof gone, altar cracked. This, Aldous says softly, was where my master worked. Long before the bishops cared what songs were holy. You step inside. The air feels charged, humming faintly, as though the place remembers. Aldous kneels by a crumbling stone basin, running his hand along its rim. They say the first hymn ever written was sung here, he whispers. Not to God, but to the art of healing. Historians still argue, you murmur, whether that's true. He smiles. Of course they do. Scholars fear mystery as much as bishops fear freedom. He removes a small pouch from his satchel and scatters something into the basin. Crushed mint leaves, maybe, or dried petals. Then he begins to hum. The sound is low, deep, thrumming like the earth's own heartbeat. It vibrates through the broken walls, up through your bones. The leaves tremble. The air shivers. For a moment, the ruin feels alive again, walls glowing faintly, shadows pulsing in rhythm. Then the sound fades, and only silence remains. What did you do? You whisper. Left a resonance, he says. In case they erase me, the echo will stay. You sit beside him on the cold stone. You think they'll really try to erase you. He sighs. Every age has its broom. Back at the inn, you find a sealed letter waiting on the table, bearing the bishop's crest. Aldous breaks it open with a thumbnail and reads silently. His face gives nothing away. Well, you ask. They've invited me to leave, he says. Permanently. Or else face trial for heresy. You swallow. You're going. He nods. Not running. Traveling. There's a difference. The innkeeper, overhearing, wipes her hands on her apron. You'll always have a bed here, singing man, she says gruffly. Aldous bows. And you'll always have a tune when your bones ache. That night, he packs quietly, humming under his breath. They'll forget me soon enough, he says. I won't, you promise. He looks at you, eyes warm despite exhaustion. Then my work's done. The next morning, you set out together again, east, where the roads are less traveled. The city fades behind you, its bells distant, its judgment fading into the wind. Aldous walks lightly, almost cheerfully, like a man unburdened. Do you ever get tired of being hunted? You ask. He grins. Only on days that end in day. You laugh. And for the first time in weeks, so does he, full and bright and free. The sound carries across the fields, startling a flock of birds into flight. See, he says, watching them rise. Even laughter can conduct a choir. The road east winds through meadows gold with late summer, dotted with wind-twisted oaks and silent shrines. You travel light, just bread, a flask of river water, Aldous' worn satchel, and that ever-present harp. The air hums with cicadas, their song a constant reminder that the world doesn't need permission to make noise. Aldous walks with renewed purpose, whistling little fragments of melody as he goes. Freedom, he says, has a key signature. You just have to find yours before someone else writes the score. You grin. And what's yours? Flat minor, with occasional grace notes, he quips. The sun climbs high. You pass through hamlets too small for maps, clusters of huts where people wave cautiously, unsure whether you're saints or scoundrels. The rumors of the singing healer have clearly spread. At one stop, an old man offers you a stool and points to his mouth, nearly toothless already. Don't fix me, he wheezes. Just play something pretty before I'm gone. Aldous obliges, strumming a melody soft as breath. The man closes his eyes, smiling faintly, and whispers, "Feels like forgiveness." Later, as you walk again, Aldous says, "That's the closest thing to truth we ever get, when someone forgets the pain for a heartbeat." By evening, you reach a ridge overlooking a broad valley. The distant village below glows in candlelight, its small river reflecting stars. You can hear faint singing, peasants at work, their voices weaving through the dusk. Aldous stops and listens. Hear that? They're in tune. You tilt your head. Just folk songs. He smiles. Exactly. The purest form of theology. You camp beneath an oak, the ground warm from the day's heat. Fireflies drift lazily, tiny lanterns blinking to the rhythm of unseen choirs. Aldous sets his harp beside him and pulls a worn parchment from his satchel. Been working on something, he says. A treatise, of sorts. He unfolds it, pages filled with looping script, half Latin, half something freer. De dentibus et cantus, you read aloud. On teeth and song. Catchy, isn't it? He says with a grin. I'm no scribe, but I wanted to leave a record. Theories, methods, a few insults toward bishops, light reading. You chuckle. Planning to publish. Planning to survive, he replies. If someone finds these pages centuries from now, maybe they'll understand that pain and melody once shared a bed. Historians still argue whether de dentibus et cantus truly existed or whether later humanists invented it as a metaphor for proto-scientific rebellion. A few fragments attributed to Aldous surfaced in the 16th century. Odd, poetic meditations linking dental hygiene to moral harmony. But the full work, if it ever was, has long vanished. You watch him writing by firelight, his quill scratching slow, deliberate arcs. You think they'll remember you as a healer or a heretic, you ask. He doesn't look up. Depends who writes the song. The fire crackles. The stars seem impossibly bright tonight, sharp and countless. You lie back on the grass, listening to Aldous hum under his breath. His voice is low, almost a murmur, but it carries, threading between the rustling leaves, blending with the pulse of insects. It feels like the world itself is keeping time. Then, faintly, from the valley below, someone answers. Another voice, distant but clear, joins the tune. Then another. Within minutes, a whole chorus rises from the fields, a spontaneous harmony echoing your campfire song. Aldous freezes, mid-strum, then grins in disbelief. Do you hear that? They've caught it. You listen, heart pounding. The melody drifts through the night, reshaped by dozens of voices, farmers, mothers, children, each imperfect, each radiant. They are singing your tune, you whisper. No, he says softly. They are making it theirs. He stands, facing the valley, and begins to play again, slow, steady, guiding them back toward unity. It's no performance now, it's communion. The night seems to breathe with it, the whole countryside vibrating in shared rhythm. When it finally fades, the silence feels sacred. Aldous sits again, visibly shaken. I always hoped the world would hum along, he says quietly. Didn't think it ever would. You smile. Looks like you started a choir. He laughs, a warm, astonished sound. Imagine that, a heretic and his backup singers. As you settle to sleep, he keeps humming softly, as if afraid the music might slip away if he stops. The fire burns low, the night wrapping you both in its endless hush. The next morning, you wake to find him already gone from camp. Panic flickers through you until you spot him down by the stream, kneeling, washing his face. His reflection ripples like a ghost. Couldn't sleep, he says when you join him. Kept hearing last night's song. It's spreading, I think. Word will travel faster than I ever could. He stands, drying his hands on his robe. When I'm gone, promise you'll tell it true. Not as a sermon, not as legend, just as it was. A tired man who liked to hum. You nod, though your throat feels tight. You're not dying, Aldous. He smiles faintly. No, but history is impatient. He shoulders his satchel, gives one last glance to the valley still faintly humming below, and says, let's see what waits beyond the hills. Maybe someone out there still has all their teeth. You laugh, but the sound feels fragile. Something about the light, the air, it feels like farewell in disguise. As you walk on, he starts another tune, new and half-formed, humming as if sketching it for the first and last time. It's slower, gentler, almost wistful. You'll remember this one, he says. It's the sound of endings pretending to be beginnings. And so you keep walking east, following both road and rhythm, unsure which will run out first. The hills roll endlessly ahead, soft green waves under a pale autumn sun. The days blur, villages, roads, kind strangers, the occasional scowl from a priest. The wind smells of harvest and wood smoke. Aldous walks slower now, the lively spring in his step replaced by something quieter, reflective. He hums constantly, though. Always humming. Low, steady, sometimes tuneless, like a man who can't bear the sound of silence closing in. One afternoon, as you pass through a field of drying wheat, he stops suddenly, hand pressed to his chest. Did you hear that? You listen. Only the wind sighing through the stalks. No, you say. What? He smiles faintly. An echo. The air remembers last night's song. You laugh. You're hearing things. Maybe, he says. But if madness sounds this sweet, I'll keep listening. You continue walking until dusk, when you reach a crossroads marked by a stone crucifix and a lone willow. Beneath it sits a pilgrim, young, pale, clutching a cracked psaltery. He looks up as you approach. Are you the singing doctor? He asks, eyes wide. Aldous bows lightly. Only when there's need. The boy explains that his sister lies ill in a nearby convent, fevered and fading. The monks have prayed, but nothing helps. Aldous listens, frowning slightly. And you think a tune might succeed where faith fails. The boy hesitates. I don't know. I just heard stories. Aldous shoulders his satchel. Then let's give the stories something new to tell. You follow him toward the convent, a simple stone complex nestled at the forest's edge. Lanterns flicker in narrow windows. The gatekeeper hesitates at the sight of you, but when Aldous mentions healing, she opens the gate. Inside, the air smells of lavender and candle wax. A nun leads you to a small cell where the girl lies pale as parchment, her breath shallow. Aldous kneels beside her, touches her wrist, and listens. She's fading, the nun murmurs. We've prayed every psalm we know. Then let her rest to a different one, Aldous says gently. He takes out his harp and begins a slow, fragile tune, barely there, like wind brushing silk. The nun frowns at first, then closes her eyes. The girl's breathing steadies. Aldous hums, shifting between minor and major, coaxing the air to move with him. The sound fills the small room, seeping into the cracks of stone and silence. The girl stirs, opens her eyes, and smiles faintly. The nun gasps. She hears you. Aldous nods, still playing. Good. That's half the cue. He hums for several minutes more, then stops abruptly, as if listening to something far away. She'll live, he says quietly. Keep her warm, keep her humming. Was that a miracle? You ask later, as you leave the convent under a rising moon. Aldous chuckles. If it was, it had good timing. Historians still argue whether Aldous's so-called convent healing ever happened or whether it was legend embroidered by followers after his disappearance. Some claim records of an unnamed healer appear briefly in the archives of St. Breda's monastery, then vanish, struck through in red ink. Others say the church ordered silence to keep the miracle unclaimed. That night, you camp in a small clearing. The firelight flickers over Aldous's face, pale and thoughtful. He takes a long breath and says, "You know, all this time, I thought I was fighting them, the bishops, the doubters. But maybe I was just trying to prove the sound mattered." You tilt your head. And now? He shrugs. Now I think it doesn't need proving. You heard them back in the valley. The song already escaped me. He pulls out the parchment of De Dentibus et Cantus again and tears away one page. Take this, he says. It's the beginning of the final section, on the mouth as a chapel of sound. Keep it safe. You stare at the fragile parchment. What if someone finds it? He smiles. Then maybe they'll build a chapel out of laughter instead of stone. The wind rises suddenly, swirling the fire. Sparks lift, spinning into the dark like stars. Aldous watches them, eyes distant. I once thought heaven would sound like a choir, he murmurs. Now I think it's silence, waiting for courage. You're not sure what to say, so you simply sit beside him, the two of you wrapped in the hush of flame and night. At dawn, he wakes before you, as usual, but this time he doesn't hum. He sits still, staring at the sunrise bleeding over the horizon. You all right? You ask. He nods slowly. I think I've reached the coda. The what? The end of the score. You feel a cold knot form in your chest. Don't talk like that. He smiles faintly. Everything ends in rest. Even songs. You walk together through the forest that morning, following the sound of birds and the crackle of dry leaves. The world feels sharper, more vivid, every color more alive, every sound more pronounced, as if the earth itself is aware this melody is fading. When you reach the edge of a hill overlooking the sea, Aldous stops. Beautiful, he whispers. The waves, listen, they are in rhythm. You listen. It's true. The surf rises and falls like breathing, like a vast unseen choir. Aldous closes his eyes and hums softly along. Perfect tempo, he says. I could die to this. Don't, you whisper. He laughs softly. Not planning to. Just rehearsing. He turns to you. Promise me something. If they ever ask what I believed, tell them this. That the body is an instrument, and kindness is how you tune it. You nod, unable to speak. He reaches into his satchel, pulls out a small wooden carving, the resonance marker, and presses it into your palm. "Bury this here," he says. "Let the sea keep the song." You close your hand around it. "And you?" He looks back toward the horizon, hair blown by the wind. "I'll keep walking until the sound fades." He starts down the path toward the shore, slow but steady, humming that familiar tune, the one from the valley, the one that began it all. You watch until the mist swallows him, until there's only the sound of waves and wind, merging into one eternal chord. Historians still argue whether Aldous vanished by choice, drowned by accident, or simply walked beyond record into myth. But even they admit one thing: songs attributed to the singing dentist appeared across Europe in the decades that followed, haunting little melodies with no author, no origin, just a feeling of mercy carried in their rhythm. And if you listen closely, especially near the coast when the wind is right, you might still hear it, soft, strange, human, lingering between the sea and silence. The sea breathes against the cliffs like an old creature dreaming, vast and endless. You stand where he left you, the wind pulling at your cloak, the resonance marker warm in your hand. The world feels oddly quiet, as if the air itself is listening for a tune that has just slipped away. You bury the carving as he asked, pressing it deep into the damp earth near the edge where grass meets stone. The wind hums softly around you, one long, continuous note that rises, falls, and fades into the crash of the surf below. You can't tell if it's the sea or something else keeping his melody alive. For a long time, you stay there, watching the horizon. Seagulls spiral overhead, their cries half mournful, half triumphant. The morning sun breaks through the clouds, scattering shards of gold across the water. You almost expect him to appear again, coat fluttering, harp in hand, humming some half-finished tune. But the only sound is the tide. Aldous is gone. You begin the long walk back inland, following the same paths you once shade, the muddy roads, the meadows, the small villages where people still hum without knowing why. It's everywhere now, the rhythm of hammers at the forge, the chanting of shepherds to calm their flocks, even children skipping stones to the same quiet beat. His music has escaped the man entirely. In one village, you pass a small chapel. The priest is teaching children their psalms. Between verses, one of them starts humming Aldous's tune. The priest frowns at first, then lets it be. "Pretty," he says finally, and smiles. You keep walking, heart swelling. You realize that history's silence is never perfect. Something always leaks through. The same church that tried to quiet him now carries his echo in every small, unremarkable song. At night, you rest beneath a lone oak. The stars stretch wide above you, cold and infinite. You think of him writing by firelight, of his quiet grin, his jokes about bishops and bees. You think of the people he helped, the boy by the river, the mason in the cathedral, the girl in the convent, and how each of them carried something invisible away from him. Not faith exactly, not science either, but something in between. A permission to heal without permission. Historians still argue whether Aldous of Noyon truly existed, or whether he was a composite of traveling barbers, monks, and mystics. Some dismiss the singing dentist as a bedtime legend for tired apprentices. Others see him as a prototype for the union of art and medicine. But the debate misses the point. The melody exists, and melodies don't need permission slips from history. As you drift in half-sleep, you hear it again, faint, familiar, a hum that might just be the wind through the grass. You hum along without thinking, soft and slow, and for a heartbeat the world feels tuned again. By morning, you reach the city gates. The cathedral bells are ringing, new bells, newly cast, brighter than before. Their tones are different now. You pause, listening. It takes you a moment to realize why. They are ringing in harmony. Not perfect, but close. Someone, somewhere in the bishop's long lineage, has retuned the bells. You smile to yourself. You got through to them, you old fool. As you pass through the square, you hear a group of children skipping rope, chanting a rhyme you almost recognize. When you get closer, the rhythm becomes unmistakable. They are using his melody, the one that made a cathedral tremble. You stop and listen, the sound bright and fragile as sunlight on glass. The laughter echoes long after you've gone. That night, in a tavern somewhere miles away, you hear the song again. A traveling minstrel sings it softly, calling it the healer's hymn. The patrons hum along, and someone wipes away tears without knowing why. You sit quietly in the corner, letting the sound wash through you. When the song ends, the minstrel looks your way. Old tune, he says. No one remembers who wrote it. You smile. Maybe no one did. Maybe it just happened. He nods thoughtfully, then starts the next song. But for you, the night stops there. The hum stays long after the words fade, as if the air refuses to let go. You step outside. The moon is high, the streets empty. Somewhere, faint and far away, a harp string vibrates, a trick of wind, perhaps, or the final echo of a promise kept. You close your eyes and whisper the line he once told you. The body is an instrument, and kindness is how you tune it. The words slip into the night, carried away on the same wind that once bore his song. You imagine it reaching some distant village, finding a sleeping child, a weary craftsman, a lonely monk, and maybe, just maybe, stirring something gentle in them. The world hums. The story lingers. And you realize that Aldous was right all along. No melody truly ends, it just changes singers. And now, as the night settles deep around you, let yourself rest with that thought. The road has ended, but its echo continues, a hum beneath the heart, steady and forgiving. The air outside your window is still, yet if you listen closely enough, maybe you can hear it too, that faint, impossible tune threading through the silence. Picture the sea again, slow and luminous, its waves breathing in and out like the world's own lullaby. Somewhere beneath the surface, the resonance marker still lies buried, carved by a man who believed kindness could sing. Every ripple carries a memory of him, spreading outward, finding new shores. You can almost see him, Aldous, walking barefoot through another dawn, the harp slung across his back, humming something bright and endless. He glances over his shoulder once more and grins. "Keep it in tune," he whispers. "The world needs the practice." The wind hushes. The stars blink slower now. Your breathing matches the rhythm of the tide, the same soft pulse that has always been there, long before songs, before stories, before words. So let it hold you tonight. Let the melody settle in your bones, quiet and forgiving. There's no need to hum it aloud, it already knows you're listening. Good night, traveler. Rest easy. The song continues.